The World Health Organization put out questionable guidance on how to deal with the coronavirus. It was slow to communicate the magnitude of the threat, and it whitewashed the Chinese government's early handling of the crisis. It destroyed much of its credibility, damaged the field of public health, and failed to contain the pandemic.
Now is not the time. That's a bit too early to consider that this event is a public health emergency of international concern.
WHO's response in part stems from its overly deferential stance towards China, which is its second biggest contributor among 194 member states.
The Chinese government is to be congratulated for the extraordinary measures it has taken to contain the outbreak.
WHO whitewashed the authoritarian government's overall record. It praised China for releasing the virus's genome while neglecting to mention that it took them at least 17 days to do so. It didn't report human-to-human transmission until late January, even though Chinese doctors suspected it at least a month earlier. As the virus continued spreading across Europe and reached America, WHO recommended that the travel industry maintain the status quo.
There is no reason for measures that unnecessarily interfere with international travel and trade.
One country that ignored this advice was Taiwan, which also warned the WHO that it suspected the virus was spreading through human-to-human transmission and was ignored. As Taiwan was distributing face masks to its citizens, the WHO was advising the rest of the world that they were unnecessary. And initially, the CDC and U.S. Surgeon General followed its lead.
Masks should only be used by healthcare workers, caretakers, or by people who are sick with symptoms of fever and cough.
If you do not have these symptoms, you do not have to wear masks, because there is no evidence that they protect people who are not sick.
It's important to remember that if the World Health Organization had done its job, the nightmare we're living through might not have happened at all.
Despite advice from the UN agency against curbs to travel and trade, Washington is barring entry to the U.S. of foreign nationals who've recently visited China.
There is no reason for measures that unnecessarily interfere with international travel and trade.
That message from the World Health Organization Monday as China faces increasing international isolation over the new coronavirus amid restrictions on flights to and from the country. A Beijing spokesperson accusing the U.S. of spreading panic over the move. But as the strict measures go into effect, American officials like New York Governor Andrew Cuomo insist
there is no reason to panic. There's no reason to have an inordinate amount of fear about this situation.
This is no time for Donald Trump's record of hysteria, xenophobia.
As this deadly virus emerged from eastern China and began to spread inexorably across the globe, clearly headed here, leaders in New York not only failed to shield their citizens from it, they took affirmative and aggressive steps to increase the risk to their population. Watch the city's health commissioner, Osiris Barbett, urge New Yorkers to spend as much time as possible in crowded public places. Keep in mind, this video was from February 2nd of this year. That was long after the threat from the Chinese coronavirus was obvious to anyone who was paying attention.
The risk to New Yorkers for coronavirus is low, and that our preparedness as a city is very high. There is no reason not to take the subway, not to take the bus, not to go out to your favorite restaurant, and certainly not to miss the parade next Sunday. I'm going to be there.
But there's really no need to panic and to avoid activities that we always do as New Yorkers. We are a hardy people.
It's very important that we recognize that this holiday and this festival is of tremendous significance for many communities in our state. And it is very important that we ensure that we don't have misinformation. And many in the media have been covering this issue as if it's, a terrible plague that people have to avoid.
On March 2nd, this March 2nd, Mayor Bill de Blasio tweeted this, quote, "Since I'm encouraging New Yorkers to go on with your lives, plus get out on the town despite coronavirus, I thought I would offer some suggestions. Here's the first. Through Thursday, go see The Traitor. If The Wire was a true story plus set in Italy, it would be this film." That's right. Go to a movie theater immediately. You must. A week later, de Blasio was still encouraging New Yorkers to live it up and mingle in large groups. Soon after that, people in New York inevitably started to get sick, in some cases very sick, in some cases they died. And then suddenly de Blasio was on Meet the Press shrieking that Donald Trump had abandoned the city. It was their fault, all their fault. That line almost always works, which is why de Blasio did it. The media play along and move on to the next thing, and no one remembers what actually happened.
People are like, I think I have the flu. Could it be the coronavirus? Overall, most people should not be terribly concerned about it. You definitely want to pay attention.
Should they panic?
No, Americans do not need to panic. What I would suggest, however, is that Americans take this as a wake-up call for seasonal flu.
Flu is a much bigger deal.
There's an important context we need to keep this in, and that is that the flu is more deadly.
Maybe this was a good opportunity to remind people of that.
Such a good reminder.
And while there's a lot of fear over this coronavirus, the flu is already widespread in the U.S., and it really is much more deadly, is it not?
Coronavirus is not going to cause a major issue in the United States. We're going to have 40 to 60,000 deaths this year in the United States from the influenza, and it's preventable.
And there are only 12 confirmed cases of coronavirus here in the States.
The risk is low. The risk, however, for the flu is through the roof.
Health warning from doctors why they say people should be more worried about the flu than the coronavirus.
Half of the people in America do not get a flu shot, and the flu right now is far deadlier. So if you're freaked out at all about the coronavirus, you should be more concerned about the flu.
What were the other news outlets saying then? The ones who are telling you now that Fox News did this? Well, here's what they were saying. On January 29th, the day after that aired, Vox tweeted this: "Is coronavirus going to be a global pandemic? No. Period." The Washington Post launched a barrage of articles explaining how coronavirus fear was totally irrational. On January 31st, they wrote this: "How our brains make coronavirus seem scarier than it is." February 1st, "Get a grip, America. The flu is a much bigger threat than coronavirus for now." February 3rd, "Why we should be wary of an aggressive government response to coronavirus," end quote, the response they're now demanding. As new cases of this disease popped up around the world, the delusion continued unabated. In fact, it got worse. On February 18th, the New York Times, the paper scolding Fox News, declared that, quote, "In Europe, fear spreads faster than the coronavirus itself." 3 weeks later, Italy shut itself down and thousands died. On CNN, on February 21st, they told you that the real plague in America was, quote, "racist assaults and ignorant attacks against Asians," end quote. That's always the fear, and it's always aimed at you. That's what they really believed. Caring about coronavirus, wanting to protect the public from a pandemic, was racist. That's how deluded they were. Mark Levine chairs the Health Committee on the New York City Council. On February 9th, he tweeted this, quote, "In a powerful show of defiance of coronavirus scare, huge crowds gathering in New York City's Chinatown for ceremony ahead of annual Lunar New Year parade. If you're staying away, you're missing out." Can you imagine? His wokeness took precedence over your life. That same day, New York City Health Commissioner Osiris Barbett tweeted this, quote, "Today, our city is celebrating the Lunar New Year parade in Chinatown. I want to remind everyone to enjoy the parade and not change any plans due to misinformation spreading about coronavirus." What was that misinformation? That it came from China, that it was dangerous, that you could get hurt by it? Misinformation, said the health director. None of these people cared about you. They didn't care about protecting public health or sharing accurate information. They cared about feeling virtuous. They put their wokeness above your life, as they always do and always will.